Puerto Rico faces unprecedented natural disasters, with corruption and incompetence plaguing the system. But what is really happening in Puerto Rico? And what is the U.S. government doing? Welcome back to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. If there's one place in the world that has seen its fair share of strife, hardship, and struggle, it's my roommate's side of the apartment. Seriously, Carl, you almost have to work to be this revolting. But far worse than Carl's hoarding of bacteria is the struggling island of Puerto Rico, which God has apparently decided to test by seeing just how much depressing stuff can be repeatedly thrown at them. Puerto Rico is here. And that makes it easy to forget that it's part of the United States. It has 3 million residents, which is more than 19 of the 50 states, but it is not a state. It's an unincorporated territory. That means its residents are U.S. citizens, but they don't pay federal income tax, and they don't have a vote in Congress. Kind of like Washington, D.C., except they still have to pay federal income tax, and they're salty about it. The D.C. license plates literally say end taxation without representation. But that's a topic for another video. Back to Puerto Rico. Besides being left out of most maps of the U.S. and much of the U.S. political system, Puerto Rico has been dealt a lot of bad hands. In the 2017 hurricane season, it was hit by a staggering 10 hurricanes. Those included Hurricane Maria, a Category 5 monster that killed around 3,000 people and left some parts of Puerto Rico without power for up to 11 months. The 2017 hurricane season foreshadowed many of the island's problems to come. Those problems included gross incompetence when it came to the handling of disaster aid. For example, a local Puerto Rican radio station called Radio Isla documented an instance in which 10 trailers of emergency aid, which reportedly included food, water, and baby supplies, were left to rot in the parking lot of a San Juan government building for almost a full year after Hurricane Maria. That made locals furious, and they protested. And that led to reforms in the ways Puerto Rico distributed disaster aid by setting up smaller regional distribution centers. Fast forward a few years, however, and things appear to be backsliding, and not just because of the earthquakes. Yeah, Puerto Rico has been hit by a series of earthquakes since December 28th, with a serious 6.4 magnitude earthquake hitting the island on January 7th. That earthquake killed at least one person, damaged hundreds of homes, and displaced more than 8,000 people who ended up in emergency shelters. Across the island, it caused an estimated $100 to $200 million in damage. You wouldn't have heard much about this in most of the United States, however, where the news was dominated by something more important. Ricky Gervais telling celebrities that they're a bunch of douchebags.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything.
He shook those celebrities like a 6.4 magnitude earthquake in Puerto Rico. But that's not to say Puerto Rico underwent catastrophic, irreversible damage. Unlike Tom Hanks. No cruise ships were canceled, which is important for an island that's heavily dependent on tourism. Most of the island's popular destinations were also left unharmed. And while there were temporary power outages, 99% of the power that was cut out has been restored. So that about wraps things up, right? Everything's gone back to normal in Puerto Rico with no political earthquakes on the horizon? Sadly, things continue to get only more frustrating for Puerto Rico. On January 18th, a man named Lorenzo Delgado Torres live-streamed on Facebook his walk through a warehouse in the city of Ponce. It shows mountains of donated emergency supplies, some of which had been sitting around for years while everyday Puerto Ricans struggled with one natural disaster after another. According to the video, the water appears to have expired, which I didn't even know water could expire, and that there was no indication that aid workers had attempted to distribute the aid. This video made locals furious again, and they protested again. The incident also sent shockwaves through the Puerto Rican political system. The head of Puerto Rico's emergency management, Carlos Acevedo, released a long statement defending his agency, saying that the island did not have a shortage of emergency earthquake supplies. In other words, who cares about all the rotting supplies in the back of a warehouse somewhere, most of which were there because they were donated? We have everything we need. Acevedo then doubled down, also blaming the fact that Torres, the guy who filmed the video, was even there to begin with. The citizen who entered the property today and shared the images on social networks violated the security perimeter, which in turn represented a risk for him. See, folks, the real safety issue isn't that people weren't getting the supplies they needed after a devastating earthquake. It's that a man violated the security perimeter. The public didn't buy it, and the backlash pushed Puerto Rico's Governor Wanda Vazquez to fire Acevedo, the emergency management chief. She also ordered an immediate investigation as to why the supplies had been held up. The following day, Sunday, Governor Vazquez held a news conference in which she announced more people would be fired, including the head of Puerto Rico's Department of Children and Families and the Secretary of Housing, under whose jurisdiction some of the warehouses fell. That's clearly a person who knows how to clean a house. It's a lesson that certain roommates could learn from. Carl. According to a National Guard spokesperson, some of the aid had already been delivered in the days following the video's release to communities around the main quake zone that hadn't previously received much assistance. The actions taken by the governor may be too little too late, though. Puerto Ricans took to the streets again, with some assembling outside the governor's mansion to express their outrage and calling for the governor's resignation. And while the number of protesters has been relatively small so far, this is exactly the climate and frustration that led to the ousting of the previous governor, Ricardo Rosselló, who also faced accusations of being unresponsive to the needs of Puerto Rican citizens. In an interview with Telemundo, however, Governor Vazquez insisted that she would remain in her post. This whole scandal probably makes Donald Trump feel vindicated for the comments he made back in 2019, when he tweeted, "Puerto Rico is one of the most corrupt places on earth. Their political system is broken and their politicians are either incompetent or corrupt." Well, it turns out there's some truth to that. He also tweeted, "I'm the best thing that's ever happened to Puerto Rico." Okay, that's ridiculous. Tostones are the best thing that has ever happened to Puerto Rico. Followed, of course, by J-Lo's Super Bowl shout-out. Fortunately, Trump has held his tongue about this latest Puerto Rico scandal, at least so far. President Trump's administration, however, has moved to impose strict new limitations on the ways in which Puerto Rico can spend $8 billion in emergency relief that the island was allocated by Congress. That's a reflection of the administration's concerns over Puerto Rico's corruption in general, a decision made before the latest warehouse scandal. Their proposals include increased oversight by the island's independent governing body called the Fiscal Control Board, a new system for registering properties and deeds that would attempt to curb fraud, and an agreement to allow federal contractors doing disaster relief to be paid less than $15 per hour. Critics of the administration say that it has unfairly targeted Puerto Rico, and that the holdup is costing lives. According to a statement released by Congresswoman Nydia Vazquez, the first woman of Puerto Rican descent elected to Congress, not only does it defy common sense to withhold these overdue funds now when the island just suffered an earthquake, but doing so is immoral and illegal. No matter your political leanings, I think I speak for all of us when I say, while much of the news coming out of Puerto Rico makes the new 1917 film look like an episode of the Teletubbies, there are a few bright spots on the horizon. According to the head of Puerto Rico's tourism office, the island has weathered the storms with all of its major hotels still intact and open for business, as well as all 3 of its airports. So, folks, if you're thinking about an island getaway sometime soon, you could do worse than Puerto Rico. Their economy could sure use the help, the place is stunningly beautiful, and you can get bottled water for free now. The catch is, it's expired. But at least they still have tostones. So, what do you think about the situation in Puerto Rico? Leave your comments below. And remember, America Uncovered is supported mainly by viewers. So, visit patreon.com/America Uncovered. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making great episodes. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.